Hey there, how you doing today? Today is when it becomes obvious that I have a week delay between what I do on Sunday morning and what I post on social media. Today's a Thanksgiving talk. I read a piece on life being full of punctuation marks the other day by a fellow named Dan Meyer, and I liked it. And so I'm using a lot of his thoughts this morning. It says life is filled with punctuation marks. Interesting way of looking at it. We all have question marks. Sometimes we have commas, comma, 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 periods. But the thing that keeps us going is the exclamation point. Lots of question marks in life, isn't there? Like, is cereal soup, for example? Or is a hot dog a sandwich? One person in our congregation gave us the answers like, yes. Oh, no. She said no, but they're delicious, which I'm not so sure of, but she thinks so. So there's the answer. Hot dog a sandwich? No. Are you breaking the law if you drive past those road signs that say do not pass? Before they invented the drawing board, what did they go back to? It's a mystery. Or why do we park on driveways and drive on parkways? Are crop circles the work of a serial killer? I like that one. Ever wonder about those things? Things that make you go, I wonder. Questions. But on a more serious note, I watched a movie on Brandon Bullsworth a couple weeks back. He was a walk-on with the Arizona Razorbacks. Nobody gave him a chance, but he made it. He became an All-American. He got drafted by the Indiana Colts. Hardworking guy, loved God, tried to do everything the right way. Innocent almost to the point of being painful. But before he was able to sign his NFL contract, he was in a car accident and he was killed. And the movie was highlighting his brother's question mark as it was telling Brandon's story. Why? Why, God? Why do bad things happen to good people? Here's a kid just trying his hardest. Wouldn't hurt a fly. And why did this happen? Why did the righteous suffer? Life is full of mysteries. Some are painful. Some are kind of funny to think about. I like question marks. I like to search for answers and for meaning. I'm curious. I always ask why. People say, do this. I'm like, well, why? Maybe that's a little stubborn streak or rebellion in me, but I need to know. Things need to make sense to me. But sometimes we're left without an answer. And then what? 'Cause I don't want my life to be about question marks. I don't want to be always lamenting, why God? Why me? It'd be a shame if people always remembered me for how I went around asking, when are you going to put my screwdriver away? Or how are we going to pay for this? Or maybe people might ask me, when are you going to clean up? When are you going to tidy your room? A life filled with question marks isn't ideal. A life filled with commas isn't ideal either, because commas are the friend of people who like a run-on sentence. Can't come to a complete stop. It goes on and on and on, and you never can catch your breath if you read a run-on sentence. Like, stop and let me breathe a minute here. He did this, he did that, then he did this, then he went there. He had this to do, had this to do, on and on and on. A comma defines a lot of modern society where we don't get enough breaks, we don't take time to relax, we don't have some peace in our lives. It's also, the comma defines a person who doesn't have peace in their heart. Like when life stops, they feel the emptiness. So we keep busy so we don't have to dwell on that. Or some of us feel like we don't have a choice. Like, I got to pay for this, I got to pay for that. I'm just working. I need to do this. I need to be involved in that. I need to, make myself feel better. So I need to be involved in a bunch of things or to prove that I'm a good person. It's achieving or whatever. And sometimes we need to, sometimes we have busy points in life, but we all need a full stop somewhere. We don't remembered as a person who's loving, listening, happened mainly in just the brief pauses of a run-on sentence, like barely home to talk to the kids or the wife or the husband or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Just didn't have time to stop and enjoy life, or always looking for something more. The pasture's always greener over on the other side of the fence. But on the other hand, we don't want a life that's punctuated with nothing but full stops, just a period. It's really important to make a full stop now and then, but some people have an event in their life and that becomes a period, but that's the end. Like there's nothing written after that. It's a dead place that can't move on. Something painful happened, something tragic, some disappointment. I didn't get the promotion, didn't get the job, or I married the wrong person. I don't think that. I don't think that. But that becomes a full stop. You can't move on from that. And for some, 2019 was a full stop. Millions of young people, older people even too, they can't get beyond that. They're always pining for the good old days. Things will never be the same. And so we're always just rereading all these well-worn pages of when life was better. Or it might have been 9/11 for some people, or I'll never trust again. Or, like, not just these haven't been tragic, life-changing, significant events for sure. But if we're stuck there and if we can't move on, it's a tragedy because God has things to write. There's still stories to be written in your life, in mine, in the world. God's still doing stuff. He's still moving. He's still working. He's still got a plan. And if we don't want our life defined by some event or something that happened to us or something we couldn't control, and we're just saying it's never going to be the same. There's no more hope. There's no more joy. It was better then. It's never. There's no future. That's tragic too. We don't want our life defined by that. And I wonder what the people who are closest to us would say about the punctuation marks that are most evident in our lives. Is it a question mark? Are we always lamenting why? Why, God? I don't understand. Or comma, comma, comma. Just I have to fill my life. I don't have time to slow down or stop and smell the roses. Or did we come to a complete stop somewhere and we lost all hope for any kind of a future? The truth is, all of us share some of these at some time. But if you think about it, what underlines all of these punctuation marks is a common theme of some kind of discontent. Like I don't have the answers or the ease that I'm looking for. Why? I don't have what I'm supposed to have, or I just feel this emptiness inside. And so I got to keep going, going, going. Or I don't have what I used to have, or life is over. There's nothing to look forward to. It's discontent. And it's so easy to get caught in these discontented places. And the refrain of loss, discouragement, anxiety is all around us. So much focus on the things that are wrong, things that are hard to fix, never going to be the same again. And that's why we make the choice during this season, purposefully, maybe even painstakingly, to punctuate the storyline of our lives with the great exclamation point that's thanksgiving, giving thanks. And we're not the first ones who ever needed this. If you're familiar with the storyline of the Israelites, then you know how their lives were filled with the same punctuations we faced in ours. Suffered more than their share of questions. They journeyed on, their lives calmed by seemingly relentless series of battles and breakdowns. At times they came to full stops at impossible places. A sea they couldn't cross, a mountain they couldn't go, an enemy they couldn't conquer, walls, fortresses that seemed there was no way of getting through there. And sometimes they had seasons of loss, despair, complaint, but they had this saving discipline that we recognize that kept them from going under. Time and again, we see them pausing on the pathway, stopping for a moment, raising their eyes to heaven in order to give an exclamation point of thanks to God. And we see one of these examples in Chronicles 16. There's young King David. I don't know if it's right to say he was young, but sure he wasn't by the time he became king. King Saul's reign is over. King David is king now firmly by prophetic declaration and popular acclaim. He's led Israel in successful battles against the Philistines. They've recovered the Ark of the Covenant. Some stuff happens, but now they're bringing it into Jerusalem. And David is just dancing with joy in front of the Ark as it's coming home. And he composes a song and he gets guys to play. They're having a Thanksgiving service, like they're worshiping God. They got the instruments out And he writes a song that we know at least one line of really well. But I'll read, I'll read First Chronicles 16, 1-4. They brought the ark of God and placed it inside the special tent David had prepared for it. And they presented burnt offerings, peace offerings to God. When he had finished his sacrifices, David blessed the people in the name of the Lord. Then he gave to every man, woman in all of Israel a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins. David appointed the following Levites to lead the people in worship before the ark of the Lord, to invoke his blessing, to give thanks, to praise the Lord, the God of Israel. It's a Thanksgiving service. It's handing out food. They're celebrating, dancing, singing songs. The band's all playing. And David writes this song, of which we know at least one verse, maybe the whole song we don't know, but this one verse, 1 Chronicles 16:34. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. And you probably know the song that says, his love endures forever. And it flows with the music, the way it was written, but we leave out the word faithful. And having faithful and endure forever is a little bit redundant when it's all in the same sentence, but I like the original better. His faithful love endures forever. It's like David is doubling down on the goodness of God's love and his grace and his mercy, and he can't find the words. Like, we just don't have enough words to explain or expound upon how deep, as Paul says, and how wide, how the depth, the length, the width, the breadth. It's beyond comprehension. You'll never understand it, but his faithful love endures forever. This isn't the first time Israel had a Thanksgiving celebration, and it isn't always on this scale, but this exclamation points, these things are found throughout all the history of the storyline of Israel. As a nation, the first example might be when they got out of Egypt. We sang this song when I was a youth, The Horse and Rider. I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider fell into the sea. And I was always like, what? Like, I even said to one of my teachers, because I went to a Christian school, we have devotions, we sing this song. I'm like, the horse and rider fell in the sea. So, like, why am I praising God? But I didn't realize that this is a song of Miriam, Moses' sister. I found out later. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, this was a moment of celebration for them, because Egypt was coming after them. They'd just been set free from the land of Egypt. They were trying to get away, all former slaves. Now Pharaoh's coming at them with all of their armies. They're literally trapped between a rock and a hard place because the army's coming and the sea's there. And then God parts the sea, and so they're walking through. Pharaoh's army's still coming after them. They're like, well, we're getting through the sea, but this army's still following us. To get up on the shore, God lets the waves crash in, the army drowns. It's a victory. Like, God set us free. We were doomed. Like, there's no way out. Man, we were doomed. They were at a full stop. This is the end. Not even that, there's no more hope for us. Like living without hope. It's like, literally, this is the end. But God made a way. God opened an impossible way, and he did an impossible thing, and he delivered them from their enemies. And so I'm singing triumphantly. I'll sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider fell into the sea. God obliterated all my enemies. It's a great big exclamation point for them. Celebrate God. They would set down exclamation points in the form of stone altars. Something great would happen. They'd pile up some rocks there and say, this God did something right here in my life. And throughout the land, you'd see these altars here and there. That what happened? This is a mark. This is an exclamation mark in our history. God did something great here. Crossed over the Jordan. They put a all stone altar there. Abraham had something happen. All these people. If you something, hey, like you'd walk through the land, here's God did something right there. God did something right there. These altars testifying, God helped me. God delivered me. God did something good. So give thanks to the Lord. You might stop at that altar and just say, thanks, God. Like, maybe you wouldn't even know, or maybe you would know, but maybe, hundreds of years later, you wouldn't know. But here's a testimony that God did something. And you might stop there and just worship God. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love. His faithful love was already happening way back hundreds of years ago for my ancestors, and it's going to keep on enduring. So give thanks to God. His faithful love endures forever. They'd have times of special offerings and sacrifices, of ways of saying thanks to God for provision and protection. Several times a year, they'd gather together, all the tribes from all over the nation, to have a feast and celebrate God. Passover, Pentecost, uh, the Festival of Booths. There's 6, 7, I think, actually, feasts. I don't remember them all right off the top of my head. They were to come together, celebrate, recount, read the scripture, recount what God has done, celebrate who he is, give thanks to the Lord, his faithful love, a reminder that his love endures forever, that God's been faithful again. And so we give an exclamation of thanks to God, very similar to what we would call Thanksgiving today. In various ways, they exalted God and they re-engaged a better perspective that reminded them that even though life was hard, that they were blessed. And they had gotten this far on their journeys, not by their own genius, their sweat, their merit, but by the grace of God. And they'd get clear again that God had been profoundly active for good in their lives. And there was every reason to believe that if they remained faithful, that he would continue to bless them and work with them and for them. God is for you. He's on your side. He's not against you. He's for you. And so we come to this month of Thanksgiving, and we like to attribute that Thanksgiving in this North America to the pilgrims who traveled across the sea, but it's an ancient and a holy custom. From the example of the ancient Israelites, that our neighbors to the south first learned the pattern of what we now call Thanksgiving, a tradition our nation adopted. And some would even say we did it first, because we have a little inferiority complex when it comes to the States. And so we try to see if we can be better here and there. And as the story goes, in 1578, the English explorer Martin Frobisher and his crew gave thanks and observed communion. When they arrived in what was then known as Newfoundland, they dined on salt beef, biscuits, and mushy peas, and they had communion together, celebrating their safe arrival, now accepted as the first Canadian Thanksgiving, 43 years before the first American Thanksgiving. So there you go. We did it first. To the south, or but Israelites, I'm saying, did it even way before we ever did. To the south, 110 pilgrims crossed the sea, facing many challenges. Half of their number died from cold, disease, and malnutrition in the first hard winter on foreign soils, raising probably some serious questions of God's providence. They had their life calmed with just to survive, building shelter, planting crops, trying to make it through to be prepared for the next winter. Some of them came to a period, it's like they didn't have any hope. It was better back there. So they got on a ship and they were headed home, even though they left there because of persecution. But as they were about to leave, another ship came in with medical supplies and food, and to much rejoicing, somehow they persevered. And as the second winter came along, their governor, William Brantford, proclaimed November 29, 1621, that the colonists should cease their striving, gather as a community, raise an exclamation point of thanks to God. Give thanks to the Lord. He's good. His faithful love endures forever. And it's been more than 440 years since those first exclamation points of thanks, some 3,000 years since that day in Jerusalem when David first wrote those words, give thanks to the Lord. But the capacity of God's people to handle with courage, wisdom, the great questions of life, the daily commas where it demands, and those inevitable periods when stuff just goes off the rails and we come to a full stop, still flows from this great exclamation, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. And as we're in this season of expressing gratitude to God, give thanks for the gifts of life on this awesome planet the people you love, people who've loved you, your mentors, your models, the abilities, resources He's entrusted to you, His word that guides us, His grace that forgives us, His mercy that preserves us, His eternal arms that await us, and anything else you can think of. Give thanks to God. Do it often. When questions, commas, periods pour into your heart, remember this great exclamation: God is good. His faithful love endures forever. And I give thanks. Bless you. Have a great day.